Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be showing you a short presentation that I made prior to a health talk that I was meant to be doing in July. Now I wouldn't have had this presented in this kind of way. It would have just been me up there talking with some sheets of paper to look at, but I thought I'd make it a bit more visual this time, so that might help. Anyway, this is meant to be a very rudimentary guide into why the carnivore diet and why plants are not as great as what people think. Anyway, we shall continue. So I'm going to be talking about evolution, the myths around eating animal foods, how plants are often toxic, and the health benefits of animal foods. Also, there'll be some bonus content which will be very useful for a lot of you guys, I think. So, firstly, we should not deny evolution. Whether you are religious or not, we can't deny the fact that we have had genetic adaptations over that period of time which allow us to do certain tasks. An example of that is our thumbs versus primates. Our thumbs are able to allow us to do different things, very unique to our species, definitely. And as you can see here on the right, there's actually a picture of a guy holding a spear, funnily enough. He wouldn't be able to do that if he was a monkey, I'll tell you that much. So you can see here, it wasn't until the middle of those 5 people that he started to get weapons and things like that. Now, getting to the point of weapons, there is what we call an evolutionary arms race between us. We are not all made to thrive and survive to the next generation. There is an element of Darwinism to this case. Now, for plants, they have defense mechanisms. They have Venus flytraps, for example. They can catch onto flies and digest them. We've got lots of other things as well. So plant defense chemicals, things that which will bind to us within our guts and cause lots of havoc downstream. That means us, the predator, would not be able to eat them. Now, saying that, the same is also true for things with prickles on them. Different chemicals, like I just said, that basically make life hard for the person eating them or animal eating them. Now, again, there are adaptation pressures that have been put upon different mammals, for example. For example, some mammals like cows have more than one gastric kind of system, if that makes sense. More than one stomach. We have one. So they're able to process things like that, like I just mentioned, a lot better than we are. That's the first case I'm going to make towards being a carnivore. So we're meant to consume foods with less toxins in them, basically. Now, saying that, the argument we often get is, but I thrive on a vegan diet, I thrive on a plant-based diet. The problem with that is the people that say this have not tried a carnivore diet in most cases. How do you know when you're thriving if you've not tried everything? I've tried the other things. I tried the vegetarian diet. I did it with plant-based meats, if that makes any sense. And all that sort of thing to build up my protein levels, and it was trash. It's the worst diet I've ever been in my life. I lasted 4 days. My mood was all over the shop. My skin went immediately dry. My asthma flared up. My digestive system went way worse. I was much more sore in the gut area. And I didn't assimilate foods well. Of course, there's always going to be a transitional phase, but whenever I've transitioned between one diet and another diet for any kind of case, I've never had such severe symptoms like that. Never. So that tells me a lot about me as a person and what I can deal with. Now, like I said, 99.9% similar. That's quite substantial. That would kind of tell me, based on our genetic evolution, that we should eat 99.9% similar for the most part. You know, there'll be some variances. Some people have more dairy, more eggs, less dairy, less eggs, things like that. But for the most part, we should be eating, generally speaking, what our ancestral heritage people ate, basically. So the other thing is, ancient civilizations also included plant agriculture, which happened in actually ancient Egypt. Although they did grow in population in order to have more slaves to do different tasks and build stuff, their health absolutely failed. I say this jokingly because when we look at the different data sets we do have, we can see they had astronomical amounts of heart disease, things like decay and all kinds of different organ systems. So not ideal. That was pinpointed exactly to the point that they added plants into their diet. So not ideal. Next is, I kind of alluded to this earlier, is the digestive system compatibility. We are biological mammals, and therefore we should probably consume biological mammals. If our bodies are made of protein structures, we should eat protein structures. It sounds very simple and kind of, I don't know, reductionist maybe, but it does kind of make sense. What they have, we have, that we need. So again, another case against the plant-based, way of eating in our evolutionary history. Now, the slap bang, the knockout punch, is a nitrogen isotope testing done by Dr. Mickey Bendor. Basically, what his research found out was through carbon dating, our diet was predominantly meat and animal fat based over history. That's what we know. We know that it's hard science. It's not something that's just a suggestion. It's solid. I don't really have anything to add to that point because it is a slam dunk, like I just said. So next we've got myth 1. Animal foods are unhealthy. This is brought about by a lot of industry claims. The way they do that is basically put something called a health halo on our foods. So the idea is something that is balanced is good for you. Something that is whole grain is good for you. Something that's high in fiber is good for you. Something that is packed with vitamin C. The reality is a lot of the studies and research which kind of underpins or suggests this information is cherry-picked. There's severe conflicts of interest in these studies. There's actually someone called Ansel Keys, which some of you may know. He had some ideas about different countries and how they ate from an epidemiological standpoint. Problem was he excluded the majority of the studies that he looked at in terms of what those people were eating. So it means that he said these countries are healthier, therefore that is because they eat these foods, which are plant-based foods. But he eliminated every single other country that did not fit his claims. Cherry picking, liar. And many people that are in, the carnivore space would say he should have been locked up in prison until the day he died, which is true. He is responsible for perhaps millions, if not billions, of deaths over the world. So a bad guy, not a guy in our favour, basically. Now saying that, there are some foods which will cause allergic reactions to us. Dairy and eggs being two of them, shellfish maybe. However, if we look at the vast majority of allergenic foods, they are ones which come from the plant kingdom. But I am including that kind of point just for completeness, to provide some kind of balance to the argument. You can be allergic to lots of different things, so, Anyway, the next myth. Animal foods lack nutrients. The funny thing is, they have all the essential nutrients that your body needs and at optimal amounts. These do elevate health and performance outcomes. What you see as well is the absorption is much better. Like I said in the last kind of slide, we're talking about our digestive systems here. So I've put up a little image. If you see here on the left, our digestive system is probably somewhere between maybe, a pig and a dog. So a pig's a bit longer and a dog's a bit shorter. When we think of dogs, we think of carnivores. We give them meat and things like that. A dog will not thrive in a diet of, cereal, Cheerios or things like that. The same thing is true for a pig. A pig will eat grass and things like that and some corn and seeds, which perhaps is not its species-specific diet, but they can subsist on these foods because they have a longer digestive system which can churn out more enzymes and deal with the food through mastication, through the way their jaw structured, also through the fact that the food has to go through lots of different pipes, a long pipe, lots of muscles working in synergy to get the food down. That's how they deal with plant-based foods and cellulose-based foods. Us, we're a bit more like scavengers, vultures maybe. So we can deal with foods like that. Now, another point to mention is that we produce a very large amount of protease and lipase in the majority of our digestive system. we do have a lot of amylase, which breaks down carbohydrate in our mouth. The only reason why bodies do that is because the digestive system later on, as outlined in this picture, does not deal with carbohydrate sources as well. These always come from plant-based for the most part anyway. So think of starches, potatoes. If you put, for example, a Ritz cracker in your mouth, that would digest in the mouth quite quickly. It'll go all gooey. If you put some ribeye steak in your mouth, not a lot will happen. So we know that our body's trying to immediately condense, assimilate, digest that food as quickly as possible because it is the most damaging to our body. We only want to be having no more than 10 grams of glucose in our blood at any given time. So that's the way our body does that. It deals with it fast because it wants to get rid of it. Now, next slide. Myth 3, plants are healthy. This is perhaps one of the most paradoxical arguments of them all. Now, what I will say is they are nearly all toxic to some degree. The tolerability we have to them can vary among us. We know that people with, for example, autism, like myself, should consume a diet with less oxalates in it. Things like that. So we know, okay, spinach is out of the question for me, almonds out of the question. You shouldn't eat them anyway, but they're clear indicated things which can cause a lot of harm and issues to the autistic person based on excretion rates of different toxins that come out of the body in urine samples and things like that. My actually own anecdote matches that as well. So the quicker I got rid of all those sort of oxalate rich foods, the better my health went. Now, it's funny, as we've eaten a plant-based diet, our health has got much worse. Much, much worse. We used to have more of a wholesome kind of diet, and I say wholesome because that's what my nan would have made. She would have made that sort of comment, being wholesome, which is probably true. It's quite homegrown kind of food, and she still would have eaten things like liver. Their staple meal back then might have been liver, onions, potatoes. Might have had fried eggs in the morning, something like that. So something quite whole foods based, which is, in my opinion, much better than anything else other people are doing out there, at least in a standard Western diet. Now, the problem with the plant-based diet is a number of different things. There's so many. I won't outline them all in this video. But we do know that absorption rates of plant-based foods is actually terrible. So when people are looking at a graph, they'll see something like spinach contains so many 1,000% of your RDA for vitamin A or folate or something like that, or vitamin C. The problem is oftentimes these are in foods in kind of formats that don't match our body. There's a difference between methylfolate and folic acid. The same way there's a difference between retinol, which is the one that we use for vitamin A, versus other things like beta carotene. The absorption is much less. Therefore, what you see on a label is significantly different to what we'd actually be absorbing. Now, with those lack of absorption kind of things, also comes a lot of toxicity. So on the right here, you probably won't be able to see, but if you zoom in, you may be able to. There are a number of different studies which outline why different plant-based foods are terrible. And they all come with different anti-nutrients, basically. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking to minimize anti-nutrients. So plants being healthy, definitely not. Other things to consider, which I won't go into, are glycation, deuterium, and the Randall cycle, which will be, some of those will be linked in videos at the end of this video. So you'll be able to look up them as well. Now, the main health benefits of animal foods, getting to the point, the crux of the matter. On the right here, we see a very basic table showing some berries, I believe, some kale, beef, and beef liver. The green basically highlights which food has the highest amount of it. Vitamin C, granted, is higher in kale, but you also need a lot more to detoxify yourself from the kale that you're eating. It also has higher amounts of calcium. However, that calcium is binded with lots of oxalate, which causes a lot of damage to the body. Oxalate is not something you want to be consuming ever. A very small amount of it can and does cause damage. Evident in case studies where people have been on a vegetarian diet and they've actually had kidney disease. Not ideal. Myself, back in the day when I was consuming a very mixed diet, I had spinach every day near enough. Grind styles eating it raw, but even processing it through cooking, steaming does not get rid of much oxalate at all, if any. So not ideal. It does cause kidney damage. Now, the thing about animal foods is they do contain a lot of proteins. The argument is made, I believe, that the protein amount is consistent across the board, around 70 grams for vegetarian and standard Western diet in terms of what people can consume. But the thing is, the DIAS score is not equated. It doesn't work that way. There are lots of arguments to say that it is the same, therefore, you've got your nutrients. The assimilation of the nutrients is vastly different, and the amino acid compounds within each of the diets is significantly different. So think, for example, there's a study on Pottinger's cats, and they thrive on a raw meat or raw animal food diet. The reason being the concentration is higher in taurine, therefore, which is an amino acid by the way, therefore their health status gets better because they're no longer deficient in it, because they're not fed kibble and cooked foods which they should not be eating. So that's one example of where species appropriation comes into it. Now, there are actually groups of people which have put disease states into remission, and one of them is paleomedicina. So what we know about them is magnesium, vitamin D, gut permeability can be normalized through a high-fat carnivore diet. And saying that as well, that's very easy to do. It's not a challenge. Just eat lots of fat, lots of ghee, butter, tallow, whatever you like, whatever you can tolerate. Then eat meat with it. That's literally what the way of eating that carnivore diet is. There's little thought process into it, which there is a lot for a plant-based diet. You have to actually micromanage it. It won't just come straight away. You have to think about this so much. And it's stress for a lot of people. So yeah, not ideal in that case. And the diet as well is also, obviously, in most cases, abstinent of toxins. Depends on where in the world you live, but for the most part, meat is clean. It's clean food to eat. Now, what I like to say is no carbs, no fiber, no stress. That's what I think is true. We do not need exogenous carbohydrates in the diet. We do not need fiber in the diet. Therefore, it causes less stress. The sooner people realize that, the better. And that is backed up by science. Low carb, ketogenic kind of studies say low carb is better. All these disease states go into remission, or at least the symptomology of it reduces. The only study we do have on fiber says it's trash and we should not eat it. I mean, when I say study, I mean scientific study, not just some sort of trashy funded nonsense study that doesn't really pinpoint that as the exact cause of a problem. The good science we do have does point to the fact that we should not eat fiber. Now, in summary, we've got the evolutionary argument. Animal foods have been wrongly demonized. The point of this little talk, we've demonstrated that. There's things we need in them, things we cannot thrive without. So, essential. Plants are not healthy and can cause a number of ill effects. Spot on. Not ideal for anyone, really. Now, there's also research on the low-carb community, ketogenic diets, things like that. There's a lot to look at. So if you find on Google, you can Google this sort of thing. I don't know, Alzheimer's ketogenic diet, epilepsy ketogenic diet, diabetes ketogenic diet, anything which kind of matches a carnivore diet, which is a high-fat diet with the absence or very little carbohydrates. You'll find studies which kind of show to you, okay, that puts that disease state into remission. We are fat burners, not glucose burners. That's primarily what we're meant to deal with. The science, there's heaps of science out there. We just have to look for it. It's not hard. Case studies, anecdotes from people on the carnivore diet like myself. Of course, we've got people like paleomedicina who are looking at people, measuring their levels, taking them to retreats, looking at what's happened to their blood. Okay, bang on. They're sorted. That's primarily it. Now, the bonus content I promised. So these are free retro videos, if you like, so old school videos, which I made maybe 6-7 months ago for a lot of them. And they do outline some things which I kind of didn't really underpin in this video, but I think are definitely worth a watch. So we've got the Randall cycle, also known as the fatty acid cycle. That one you must watch. That is mandatory if you're watching this video, if you've not already seen it. The next one is deuterium depletion 101. Talks a little bit about deuterium content in the food, how to lower it, things like that, and the mechanism of how it works and why that comes into diet itself. The last one is leaky gut, which I kind of went into in terms of talking about gut permeability, and some of the work by Paleo Medicina also is outlining that as well. So brilliant. Anyway, a special mention to 4 people which I greatly respect in the carnivore community online. I did take a lot of inspiration from these 4 people. So I just want to give a special mention and shout out to Dr. Anthony Chafee, Dr. Sean Baker, Professor Bart Kay, and Harry Sopanos. They have their own channels, so I recommend following them, seeing what they offer, and hopefully they'll put you in good stead. So I hope this presentation has been useful to you, and hopefully very informative. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.